So when is it time to leave? Your story, our story, part 2. Let's talk about how we know. Hey everyone, second video in the new series called Expat Confessions. We take a look at the hard questions and issues that all expats gotta face living in that faraway country for way too long, or maybe not long enough. So this video is for the expats around the world that have been expats for a while now. Maybe some of you are at the point where you're realizing, hey, if I stay much longer, I'm here for good. Should I stay or should I go? Is that a song reference? You've had your thrills, you've tasted all the food, you've enjoyed life, and you know that you'll enjoy life if you keep staying abroad. Because trust me, I've thought about living in Korea longer because in many ways, it's a much better country than America. And I don't really have to convince you, unless you're an American. But in many ways, it's not better than America. But let's get to the personal questions that we have to ask ourselves. First off, start with this one. What's the trade-off? 1 year of everyone at home getting older, the ability to travel and see more of the world, that might be a worthy trade-off. I don't believe in the idea that you have to be near your family for your entire life to have a meaningful life. You don't even have to go back if you don't want to. When I'm finally ready to step foot back in my hometown, home country, wherever it may be for good, I'll have over a decade of experiences that no one will understand. You know, they've made me into this completely different person. And I don't know where I'm going with what I'm saying here, but I love that. I think that it was worth the trade-off to miss a lot of those, weddings and new Dunkin' Donuts down the streets and little kids in their Little League games and watching, your nephews grow up or whatever. But then again, if I wait too long, I won't be able to enjoy those pointless conversations about how Diet Coke is better than Diet Pepsi, because it is. And it's also called pop, not soda. And conversations about that new neighbor down the street. You think she kind of might be a serial killer? We have active imaginations in Ohio because there's just not much else to do there except use your imagination. Anyway, I want a buffet in life. I want it all. I got a lot of what I wanted living in Korea, and now maybe I kind of want a little bit of watching my nieces and nephews growing up. Continuing to live here might not be the trade-off I want. But then again, maybe the idea of going back home sucks. Those conversations about the new Dunkin' Donuts down the street, they're probably gonna get really boring really fast. Next question, how important is family to you? And I don't mean like just your mom and your dad and your brother and your sister. That is important, but many of you, myself included, have thought about marriage in that country that you live in, or you might already be married. How important is it to live near your parents or maybe your husband's or wife's parents or their family? And the truth is, for some people, bloodline family isn't that important. You've gotten much closer to people, friends who have been there for you when your family hasn't been there for you. Your friends are your family. Because to be honest, if that were the case, in my situation, then I'd definitely be staying in Korea. So everyone has a different answer to this particular question based on what they consider family. So there's definitely no real right answer on this one. The next question I'd ask is, what's holding you back? And really think about this one. So why don't I want to move home? Is it fear? Is it pride? I don't know, but for me, I can kind of tell you what it was. I had a lot I wanted to accomplish, right? A lot of people I wanted to prove wrong. The irony of everyone asking, so when are you gonna come back home? When are you finally gonna move back? Implying that being in Korea is temporary and you can stop being Peter Pan, Alex, The irony is that question made me want to stay here even longer and prove to them that just like emo, this was more than just a phase. So I just wanted to put it in on camera while I still have my hair. Basically, what I'm saying is, for me, it was kind of pride. And that itself is not enough of a reason to stay. Another important question I always ask myself, are you growing? It could be your career. Are you making more money every year? Or maybe getting a better job that you really love and you're contributing to? Is it language acquisition? Or are you growing spiritually? You might be. At some point though, you gotta ask yourself, am I becoming a better version of myself by staying here? To be honest, I think I've become a better person, generally speaking, every year since I've been here. Well, hopefully anyway. And I think I'll keep growing if I stay. I really do. Korea's an incredible place for me. Again, for me, that rate of change has started to slow down a little bit. But here's the perspective that I hadn't thought of before. I moved to Korea for the adventure, the ability to start something new and exciting, and to learn a language and to see the world. And that was amazing, but perhaps, maybe, moving back home is that new adventure for me. Maybe it's time for me to grow as an uncle, or maybe one day a dad. That'd be kind of weird. Or as, I don't know, a guy that goes to town hall meetings and doesn't like what he hears, so he makes a long ranty YouTube video about how things are better in Korea. Maybe, I don't know, I could be that guy. I don't know if that's growing, but here's the thing. While being in another country will certainly put you out of your comfort zone, even if you've been there for 12 years, it's not just about where you live that determines whether or not you push your limits. Maybe you can just push your limits by trying to make your hometown a little better, a better place for your family to grow old in. And honestly, that can also be in that expat city that you live in too. You don't have to go home. You could be comfortable in the city you move to and make that place better for your future family. I don't know. Look, these are just a few of the questions to ask yourself. And I hope that maybe giving my perspective on them at least gave you something to think about. But we're not done yet. What's the worst advice you can take? Specifically, from who? The worst advice you can get is a definitive answer from, I think, 99% of the people you know. No one knows fully what's going on in your head. No one knows how frustrating it is for you to not speak the local language fluently or perfectly or at all. No one knows the subtle racism that some of you might feel based on the way people treat you in that country. I don't feel it, but a lot of my friends here, I know they do. No one knows that last relationship you had, the last one you were in, made you feel like giving up on dating people in the country that you're living in. No one knows the mental anguish that you go through when you see your own mother supporting you 100% being abroad when she pretends that she doesn't wish you were just back at home. But you can still see it in the back of her eyes. If one of the people who doesn't know you fully says definitively whether or not you should stay or go, then it's the wrong person to talk to when making this final decision. Trust me. But that person who can help you is out there. I know it. The one whose only motivation is to make sure that you're happy and healthy. Not your kind of friends, and also not your really close people like your sister who thinks her subtle hints of trying to convince you to go home are going under the radar. I love you, Emily, but you've got an agenda. And that's fine too. Them having an agenda isn't wrong. You'll know who it is right away, by the way. You really will. Because you'll tell them, I'm thinking about moving home, or you'll tell them, I'm thinking about living here forever. And you know what they'll say? They're just gonna say, that's great. What made you decide that? No judgment. Just supporting you and genuinely wanting to understand you better because they're your friend and they just want to know. I know this doesn't cover everything, not even by a long shot, but these are just a few of the questions that you can ask yourself when you're deciding whether or not it's time to go back, to move home, to go on and live a different life that's not your expat life, or maybe it's time for you to choose a new country and still be an expat. Anyway, I do hope that the video helped. Part of the reason that I'm starting this Expat Confessions series is to help people like me who are kind of struggling with a lot of these big questions, these big issues that expats face. It's helping us figure it out, what it is that we should be asking ourselves. And I'll get more and more into kind of why I've decided to eventually go home. Again, not like tomorrow, but soon enough. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Haseo. Okay, one more for good measure. God, put a guitar in my hand and I'm like from the early 2000s. It's amazing. I mean, I am from the early. Technically I was born in 87, so I did live through it, but I don't know what to say. Emo's not dead.